Hey, thank you for joining me for another talk on bumblebees. This time, a brief look at bumblebee lookalikes or bumblebee mimics. Hi, I'm Dave Hobbins from Fort Kent, Maine, and welcome to my talk. Why do insects mimic other insects? Well, probably the majority of the reason is for protection. In this first case, you can see a monarch butterfly on the left. Monarchs feed on milkweed. Milkweed has toxins which will cause a bird predator which eats a monarch to regurgitate, and they can learn that that is not a good thing, and so they'll hopefully avoid monarchs in the future. The viceroy is thought to mimic the monarch so that a bird will think it's a viceroy and not feed on it. So that's one example. Another example might be this robber fly that mimics a yellow jacket so that a predator may hesitate that if I mess around with this bee-like thing, I'm going to get stung. But the majority of the reason seems to be for protection against predation. Another example might be, and perhaps this is less common, is that in this case, a robber fly that mimics a bee so it can get close to other bees for predation purposes. So it's feeding on other bees. The robber fly will capture and inject enzymes into this bee in this case, and then suck out that fluid. So protection seems to be the majority of the reason. Now let's look at bumblebees and then some insects that mimic bumblebees. So as you know, bumblebees are large mass insects. A few of our North American, and I'm going to restrict this to North American, north of Mexico, bee species can be just over an inch in size. The workers, that's the queens. The workers will be a lot less than that, okay, depending on their nutrition. These are large mass, very hairy, so they're well insulated. All their parts are hairy. They have bright colors and patterns, which you have to be careful because you can get confused between one species and the other because of that. And there's a lot of variation just within a species. But all bees, including bumblebees, have two pair of membranous wings. And in the case of the bumblebee, when they're at rest, those are folded over the abdomen. Another thing is their slender antennae, which will have an elbow at some point. And they are the only species, bumblebees are the only group, I should say, that have corbicula or singular corbiculum. And here you can see in the image to the right is a corbiculum on the hind tibia, the hind leg, the tibial section of the hind leg of this northern amber bumblebee that's feeding on clover. And you can see that golden red clover pollen that's stuffed in there. So that's the bumblebee. Now let's take a look at some mimics. So what do you think this is? Hairy, large mass, two membranous wings, but remember what I said. The wings at rest will be folded over their abdomen. In this case, they are not. Another hint is the clubbed antennae. Long, slender, but a club on the end. We can't see the mouth parts, but this particular insect is a clearwing moth or a hummingbird moth, and its proboscis is rolled up underneath its head. If you saw that, you would recognize it as a moth or a butterfly relative. So going back to the bumblebee, remember you have the slender elbow antennae. You have the wings, two pair of wings folded over its back. And in this case, you can see this worker has a corbiculum that's empty, but you can see the recessed area surrounded by hairs. This is the common eastern bumblebee. What about this one? Is this a bumblebee? Well, there's a couple of hints here. Oh, slender, elbow antennae looking. Looks like an elbow. Hairy abdomen, hairy thorax. 2 pair of wings folded over its back. On the face, however, is this patch for this species. And notice, though, that the abdomen appears to not have a lot of hairs. So this is a carpenter bee. Carpenter bees are solitary bees that chew into wood and put their young in chambers that they feed. These are vegetarian, like all bees. They feed on nectar and pollen. Here you can see them on sweet pea. I took this photo in South Jersey down in Cape May at the Nature Center. Here's another one, another look-alike. What is it? Well, a couple of hints. You can't tell from this image, but there's only 1 pair of wings, membranous wings. Yes, they're kind of over the abdomen at rest. But look at the bulging eyes. That's a huge hint. The bulging eyes, it's hard to see the antennae in the left image, but go to the right image, and you can see the little stumpy antennae here. And this is a bumblebee fly. I'm not sure exactly what species, but this is a bumblebee mimic. And I was shooting these photographs on my linden tree in July, early July, when the linden flowers here in northern Maine. And until I looked at the photographs closer up, because it was moving, and I was concentrating on trying to find its location and shoot pictures. It's only after I looked at the image that I realized I was looking at a fly. As soon as I saw the eyes, I knew these bulging eyes, it belonged to the order Diptera, or the flies. But a great mimic, isn't it? Now here's another one. This really looks like a bumblebee. Scruffy hair. This photograph was taken on aster late August, early September. And if you look at the leg, notice there's no corbiculum. But this is a trick one, because this is actually a male bumblebee. So the males do not have the corbiculum, or they do not have corbicula, and they tend to be scruffy, hairy. But notice the abdomen's hairy, the legs are hairy, but this is a male common eastern bumblebee captured in late summer, fall on aster. Here's another one. What do you think? Hard to tell if it's 1 or 2 pair of wings. Looks like a buff-tail bumblebee from Europe. But again, look at the head. Big eyes and weird antennae, right? They have that 2-part antennae. And the antennae always come out like just below between the eyes. So this is a hoverfly, one of the hoverflies that mimics bumblebees. Another one? What do you think? Can't tell if it's 1 or 2 pair of wings that rest over the abdomen. Hairy, hairy, hairy. Looks like a bumblebee, but again, look at the head. Look at the eyes, look at the antennae. Those do not look, in fact, they look segmented, don't they? So this is a robber fly. So it is not a bumblebee. So there you go, a few look-alikes, a bumblebee on the left, and a bee, a fly, and a moth that are look-alikes or mimics. And with that, I'll say thank you for joining me for this talk, and I hope you will join me in the future for another Bumblebee talk. Thank you.